and then we'll just go right and live on Facebook. So that'll just take us a second. Okay, just check that. You can just sit there and smile, Collette.
In my coordination illusion.
Totally. Just loading up onto Facebook. So just a couple of seconds and then we'll do our intros and say hi to everyone. That gives everyone a moment to pop on. Okay. So here we are live on Facebook. So welcome everybody to Denby Does Dharma. I'm joined by a wonderful sister, beautiful soul sister over in France, Collette Corcoran. And it's very early in the morning for you, or midday-ish sort of time for you. It's
11 in the morning.
11 in the morning, so it's a great time, darling. So welcome, welcome, welcome. You, as we were joking before we started pressing recording, that you've got so many different modalities under your belt, and over 25 years of experience of working with women's health and the energetics of the womb and the moon and everything to do with the divine feminine, obviously the divine masculine as well, but that's your main focus. And as a founder of, or the founder of the Sacred Rose Temple there as well. So you've been very busy and very busy in the last couple of months, no doubt, with what has been unfolding around the world. So thanks for making the time to speak with me, sweetheart. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Cool. So as we said, we've got so much to talk about. I'll get you to just do a quick little blurb about yourself so everyone can, who isn't familiar with your work, can get a better understanding of, what your focuses are. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's great. So I started as a yoga teacher. I had a yoga studio and a normal job, and I had my fingers in lots of pots. So I was a very busy, ambitious woman, shall we say. And I had, like most yoga teachers that I know, had this deeper opening and awakening experience that just shattered my world, really. So I left the yoga studio and I started to travel the world and learn healing modalities, therapies, everything, traveled the world, was nomadic with my son, and literally I've spent the last 25 years learning, healing myself, mainly healing myself, doing the inner work and learning those modalities as I traveled, and decided to go completely virtual at one point and then set up somewhere else. So it's been a big, wild, crazy journey, and I landed here in France 3 years ago to open up a retreat centre, which is known as, in France, the Temple de la Rose. So that's where I am now. I'm mainly teaching online because of the current situation.
Yeah, and it's still a beautiful thing, isn't it? Because we can have conversations like this where we couldn't before, and we can reach more people. This is one of the benefits of being, confined to our homes, is that we're going to have, unfortunately, spend more time on tech, but as well be able to connect with people like yourself that we haven't before, and just open up a whole new world of what's actually out there and who's out there to support us. Because whatever's happening in all different countries around the world, and certainly here in Australia, as you know, everybody's going through their own version of crazy, and so many people are needing support now. So can you elaborate on the Rose philosophy and where that came from?
Yeah, it was just, I do Jungian work, and symbology is really important in the psyche, and the rose had always been a deep symbol for me, and I didn't know why. As a child, I had incidents with roses. I fell into a rose bush early as a child and was covered in thorns, and just this symbol kept coming up, and I was like, why does this symbol strike up so much in me? And that's how the line of inquiry opened for me. I found out about the Rosicrucian movement, the Gnostic movement, a lineage of feminine priestesses from ancient times that worked with the womb, that worked with healing, that worked on, all these different somatic experiences and sacred dance. And all of that came to me. I actually trained in a lot of those things too. So it's a philosophy and a symbology that opened up for me. It opened up so many doors, and it still does. I'm still in the depth of Jungian work at the minute, and it still keeps coming up. So they say that our psyche has these symbols that are deeply entrenched in our soul, and if we follow them and we kind of interpret them and let them open up and unfold for us, that they lead us down certain paths. So the Rose Temple is an embodiment really of all those things I've done and all the different symbols that the rose meant for me as a person.
Beautiful, and they are so divine as well, like all the colors and the scents and the texture and the visual, the symbology of that from the sensual perspective of the feminine. It's just divine. And when you say that, it's like, yeah, this you've probably heard this many times before from your clients as well. I thought I'd worked on this. Is there more stuff to do? There is. It's like the answer is always yes. How long is a piece of string? What's your answer to people that you may, because I mean, both of us work with people on ongoing and mentoring as well, but we also have one-off clients who just come and you never see them again sometimes. So how do you explain that to people when, for example, if you see them going through a journey and then you may not see them for a while and they come back and they feel like, oh, but I've been doing this work or I've seen so-and-so and I still haven't shifted this. What's the answer there?
I just say, that it's like an onion, isn't it? There's like a root cause maybe somewhere deep down inside of you, and it's all layered up like an onion, and we're peeling back the layers. And it's not I mean, me included. I've been to some place of healing, and it comes up again, and I'm like, what is this that keeps coming up, and why aren't I healing? Why is it not healing? And it's because it has a deep root in your life. It will, I see some strands of healing that I have to do that are probably going to go to the grave with me. And each time I enter into them, something deeper opens up. I always see when we go into like the suffering and the pain and the wounding and all the problems we have with it, there's always a piece of gold at the end of it, isn't there? There's always something great comes out of it if you're prepared to go there.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at like, oh my God, I've got to go through this again, I keep feeling and I try to teach that if you go through it again, there's another piece of gold coming out of it.
Yeah.
So it's like an excavation, and the deeper you excavate, the more and more and more good stuff comes out. So we've got to stop seeing it as, oh, I haven't healed that. I do. I get exasperated by some parts. And so it's a kind of relearning that the deeper it goes, the greater it is for you, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's beautifully said, darling. And too, because we're both in our guardian phase of life and we've been doing this work for quite a while, and we understand that, there's always going to be more. And I think, let's talk about that, because you and I have been talking a little bit, behind the scenes, as some other sisters have as well, about the whole maiden, mother, guardian, crone, system or structure seems to have gotten a little bit polluted or sort of distorted in a way, where we're seeing a lot of people who are possibly not as experienced or have moved through enough rites of passage are sort of jumping ahead almost energetically to teach things that they haven't actually experienced themselves yet. So, and we say, it's the maidens doing the mother's work, for example. And that's not necessary to say that everybody has to have a baby physically. Let me just make that really clear as well. Even if you don't have a physical child in this lifetime, as a woman, you're still going to go through that mother phase. Okay. So we're not persecuting and saying, if you haven't had a baby, this doesn't apply to you or you're not as good. Not at all. Not at all. So, let's start there and see from your experience of the maidens that are possibly because we all know what it's like, obviously, to be excited and eager and wanting to learn, and certainly feeling that calling, as we all do when we're healers, that we're needed right now. So we want to jump in and offer more support. But if we haven't had that experience and that foundation behind us, then what are some of the things that you're seeing happening because of that?
Yeah, I've just actually taught a course on the Mother Maiden and the Crone, and my focus is mainly on the shadow aspects of those cycles. So, if we're stepping into like the mother energy, and I'm totally with you, mother's about birthing, and that could be anything, a project or whatever. And if we're not aware of where we're still hooked into, say, the maiden, or as crones, we see in a lot of crones that are really hooked into the mother still. So all this anti-aging stuff that's going on, all the, wanting to be young, stay young. And the biggest thing I'm seeing, and probably you are, is this whole group of mothers, maybe even maidens, wanting to do crone work, and that, for me, the crone is so enticing, but I'm not there. I can't teach about what it's like to go through the menopause or what it's like to go through that cycle of life. I'm not there. It's not embodied. So it's dangerous because for me, if somebody wants crone work, I send them to a crone.
Mm.
Because they've got the knowledge about it. I could get those people and say, yeah, I can teach you a little bit. I've read books about it. I've studied about it. But they're
Mm.
going to miss the real juicy work with a real crone.
Yeah.
And everybody's grabbing at these places. You know, I see people teaching conception who've never had a child.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, it's a lived experience in your body, and you're going to deprive people
Mm.
of those lived experiences, and therefore they get a diluted version. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of diluted teaching going on instead of the real embodied, earthy, gritty work that
Mm.
will transcend you. Because I see it's psychoactivating. If someone's been through something, it has a deep impact, and it's not if it isn't.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's the key word, isn't it? Embodied, like embodiment. It's like how we can learn so many things and have all this knowledge in our brains and have the best of intentions and know in our soul that we are here to do this work and we have these gifts and that's our purpose in life. But again, it's that sense of patience. I remember one of my lovely friends from years ago when she first did a what is it? It's the human design program on me years ago. And she said, one of my main personal lessons in this life was patience. And of course, at the time, I was just like, that's the last thing. No, not patience, anything but patience. And I got goosebumps through my body just thinking about it. If she ends up watching this. Hi, Glenda. But it's been so true, just to slow down and be in the moment and appreciate and learn, use your discernment, but also be willing. And I'll get you to go into this because this is, as you said, you're doing the Jungian stuff and the shadow work, or Jungian, sorry, that the gems and the lessons are in all those, soul bone pulling apart moments where we're feeling like we're literally deteriorating, when we are to a degree, obviously. And you can't help anyone through that phase. It's like the transition when you're birthing a baby and then suddenly it's like, the midwives look at you and they go, you got to do this on your own, sister. And something, and you're like, oh, bugger, give me some more drugs. Someone else take the baby and just do it for me. But it's that sense of that the embodiment of that strength and that courage that is in the divine feminine in all of us. And I think, we'd be cheating ourselves if we rush ahead and don't give ourselves, have the patience to experience all these, the build up really of that. So when you do get to Guardian and Crone, then everything just flows organically and you don't have any sense of regret of not having, done the work for you in the best possible way. So let's talk shadow work then, because that's obviously a big part of all this. Woohoo! And everyone's, and I've done quite a bit of that myself. I don't teach it because I don't feel that that's not my area of expertise. And again, I would send my clients, as you do as well. It's perfect. And even in yoga, if someone comes, and it's happened once or twice, not for a very long time, but in the beginning, when I was a young yoga teacher and I, again, was green and I thought I knew everything, of course, and I was very good, but I was like, yeah, I can fix everybody. It took me quite a few years to actually realize that when someone would come to my class and they were older or they had some sort of other condition that I wasn't familiar with, that it was actually safer and more responsible for me to say, I can't teach you, you need to go somewhere else, and here are some people that I would refer you to. It's the ego, isn't it, really, that comes in to say, no, you can do that and try. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes in moments, we need that. You do need to take a leap of faith in yourself, don't you? And just go, oh, well, I will try this, but not when it comes to somebody's spiritual health, that's for sure.
No, and I trained in lots of different styles of yoga, Ashtanga, Vinyasa, Yin. I did pregnancy yoga, and I had a big studio that I had to self-run. And at the beginning, so the first 18 months, I was every teacher in that studio. And I remember sat looking at my pregnant ladies, and I was like, I'm doing these a disservice, because if I was just a pregnancy yoga teacher, I'd be studying it, reading books on it day and night, doing courses. And so I said to him, ladies, I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to get a specialist teacher in who all she does is pregnancy. And that way, and they were so enriched by that teacher. I was a great pregnancy yoga teacher, but I just kept feeling I am not giving this is not where I am either. It wasn't where this woman who I got in the studio, she had 7 children. She just expanded. She was doing all this other work with them. So yeah, we have to realize where we want to set our energy, and work in that. And that's the same with us, as we said, being in this guardian position. This is where I am, so let's get the most out of this. Let's work in this forte. And the mothers doing the crone work, if they were doing the mother work, it would be so much more potent and, you know, accessible to the maidens. And so we've all got a place, haven't we?
Yeah, totally. And when you say that too, I just get the thought of, you know, a lot of young women, young girls and young women. It's such you can never get that back, you know, that innocence and that sense of youthfulness and, you know, the smooth skin and the taut butt and all those things, and where things actually lifting up on its own instead of going down. You never get that back. So it's like, just enjoy that and appreciate that. It's like when we see little kids, and we did it too, of course, we all want to grow up quick, of course, and move through that. But what's that saying? You know, youth is wasted on the young. You don't really get that until you know, you've moved through a certain stage. And I know certainly before I became a mother, I used to tell, you know, my sister in particular, how to raise her 2 children, you know, which is like, because, yeah, I wouldn't do that, or maybe you should do that. And I must have driven her absolutely insane. And when I look back, and the minute I had my own child, I was just like, whoa, Nelly, like, what was I doing? You know, it all really hit me, and our relationship changed, of course, as well. But, you know, I was very lucky she didn't give me a good slap across the chops quite a few times, because I had a lot of knowledge about children and yoga and those sorts of natural health and things that I thought, from the best intentions, I wanted to share with her, but I actually was talking out my arse, and I had no idea what I was talking about when it came to kids. So that was, yeah, we've all got our own stories like that, of course, and we learn through that. But we're certainly seeing a lot of, as I said, the shadow work, and a lot of, especially in the spiritual community, I know you've seen this and you're connected around the world and watching it in different countries as well, that it's this peace, love and light, peace, love and mung beans type of attitude of like, let's not go into the shadow because it's dark and it's nasty and it's uncomfortable, of course, but it's we don't actually need to go there because that just drags us down and it's a bad vibe. So do you want to expand on that from your experience with working with that and also witnessing that?
I've been there, you know, I've been in the light brigade, the mantra singing, hymn, keep it all light and fuzzy, and I had a great time there, but nothing changed for me. And so I was looking for something deeper, and I actually got catapulted into shadow work. I ended up being in a really bad situation with a school, a teaching school, and a teacher, and I got told, yeah, your shadow brought this to you, and I was like, what's that? And this person, it was a very famous person, it was Carolyn May, spoke to me, and she said, this is your shadow, you need to, and I just listened to everything she said, because it hit me like a wet fish across the face. And shadow work started for me then. It was not about doing my own shadow work, because of course I dabbled with it, I'd seen it as a modality, but I mean the deeper shadow work where someone analyzes you and tells you the things that you don't want to hear about yourself. It's a self-investigation. The whole applications that you're giving start to open your psychology to some unconscious behaviors that you're not aware of. But they are highlighted and opened up by an analyst who's trained to work deeper into that shadow. And it blew my mind that nobody else was a problem, that nothing was against me, and I was my own worst enemy, and I was the reason I was powerless and all those things, and that I could change it.
Yes.
And it suddenly became an empowerment tool, because that's what it is. It's not easy. It's really, really hard. And I'm in the midst of a year-long individuation program, which Jung coined as the 4 stages of transformation. And the first stage is shadow, and it is deeply upsetting and not nice to see yourself in the way that you see yourself, but it really brings about deep spiritual synchronicities, deep signs, lots of things speaking to you, lots of opportunities to change. And like in a moment, something will completely change in your life. And it is magical, deep, dark. And I don't see darkness as what I used to see it, the imprints I had about darkness. I now see it as this rich, fertile, growing ground where I go into the depth of my own darkness and I come out holding a torch. It's an illumination.
Yeah, definitely, like going into the cave of the void or the womb space of that as well. And I suppose by the same token, Collette, when people can get caught up in the peace, love, and light, a lot of people can also get very stuck and attached to, addicted to the shadow side of themselves as well. Have you had an experience? I'm sure you've had experience with that. Have you got something you can share around how is that harder to drag people out of that addictive side of things, or as opposed to getting the light people to go into the shadow?
Yeah, I mean the dangerous thing is depression, isn't it? Depression is that you dropping in completely into your shadow without you seeing a way out.
Mm,
But if you, that's why it's really important to have someone working with you, because people are trained
mm,
to not let you go there and stay there. I mean, I remember doing all this emotional healing work, and it was the same teacher, Caroline May, said to me, this is woundology. You're all stuck in woundology. And we do, don't we? We absolutely love that suffering. I've seen it in the ashrams in India, like watching people do Osho and going through that like crying stage and crying and crying and crying. And it's addictive. They
mm,
want to
mm.
stay there as much as they want to stay high. So
Yeah,
it's about that seesaw of balance and recognizing, where am I? Oh my God, I've been a week and I'm still down in the dumps. What, you know, and I have to pull myself out of some of those spaces and
mm,
go, okay, enough's enough. You've worked with that piece. It's time to put it in bed. And we do actually have a practice in the Jungian work that allows us to put these wounds to beds. And
mm.
we use symbology for that. It's
Yeah,
kind
right.
of like a resolution for it. Otherwise, you, like you say, you get addicted to doing it because it's so it's transformative. So
Yeah,
people get addicted. We have long breaks in between our modules, and then you're told not to do this again for a while,
yeah,
just
yeah,
like go live life. Yeah. So it's
yeah.
about balance, isn't it? And all of us who are in this work, I think we're like those hard, fast personalities that get addicted, that like to do it hard and fast, and we're seekers. So
Mm.
we just need to have that, maybe that other person in your life that's saying to you, look, enough, or, have a
Yeah,
break.
yeah.
Just have a break.
Back off, baby, for a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, we're seeing how many billion people that are left after all these jabs, that is, around the
Yeah.
planet, going through this cathartic stage or these rites of passage within themselves. It's got nothing to do with what's going on outside in the world. It's all about what's happening inside us, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And this time is a big descent into the human shadow, into the collective shadow. Everything that's around us is completely born from within ourselves, all
Mm.
of us, every single one of us. It's not happening to us, is it? It's happening with us.
Yeah,
And whatever side of the fence that you're on with this, it is a complete and utter transformation of you. It
yeah,
really is. And
yeah,
I think what I'm seeing out there is it's this horrible split happening, and we can't deny it, between the different sides.
yep,
And it's about holding compassion. It's hard. I get really triggered to do, no matter how much self-work I've done, I still get triggered. But
yep.
there's a deep care there. I really care about people, and I really care what's happening. And
Mm.
I think we have to embody that and really feel into that, that no matter what comes up, what challenges we're up against, and that will be in our family units, our friendships, communities, that we try to understand what's playing out for that person.
That person, yeah, totally, darling. And I'm just looking at a couple of comments we've got on the Facebook, and beautiful Zoe Anna has said victim shadow, and Jody Randall, the addiction of sharing shadows out of control. It's a manipulative marketing strategy, especially generational trauma. So how let's talk about that with the archetypes and the things that we inherit from our parents, and the victimhood and the guilt, the shame, the blame, all those sorts of things. What can you share about what you noticed over the years of your practice? The main archetypal challenges, I suppose, for women, and the ones that are linked with those different phases of womanhood as well.
Yeah, so there's like four foundational archetypes within the psyche, and the victim is definitely one. And it's a really difficult place, isn't it? Because I've worked with women that have a deeply entrenched victim archetype, but that's been because of some traumatic experience, perhaps. but they use it over and over and over again, and it's the language of the day. And this is where we do in Jung, we say, let's put this to bed, this needs going to bed, because the victim will never heal. The victim never heals. So the longer you're in that victim consciousness, the more drawn out that wound is, and you have to find a way to put it to bed. So work with a therapist to put it to bed. That doesn't mean you forget it happened to you. Of course you can't do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's this beauty, it's false beauty, in being a victim, because it gets attention, it sells product, whatever it does. It has a whole big dark energy feel to it. And we all have to watch and we all do it, don't we? There's not one human being that doesn't enter victim consciousness.
Totally.
The power is in the awareness. The power is in being conscious of it. And that archetype works hand in hand with our saboteur. So, yeah, whenever we get into victim consciousness, we'll find our little saboteur archetype comes out the closet and says, right, we're going for a walk and we're going to destroy anything in your life that's working.
Yeah. I can relate to having done that to myself for many years on and off, and probably lifetimes as well, because if we go by the code that whatever we've is unresolved from the past lifetime we bring forth into this one, then the stronger those experiences are going to be in this present lifetime. That sort of is verified, like, okay, well that's what you really do need to focus on. And it all feeds into identity, doesn't it, Collette? Like, we're so fixated on the ego and identifying ourselves as anything, whether it's feminine or homosexual or some other sort of sexual, or a mother or father or this or that, a different type of worker, and some sort of label. We love the labels. I can only imagine what you're learning in the course about all those sorts of things. So with those,
that's the persona. Like we've got so many bloody different masks, haven't we, that we're always trying to face behind. And the truth about the persona, the reason why we do that is it does protect us. We need to behave certain ways in certain circumstances, so that keeps us protected. But we often do that in the wrong places as well, that we start to lose identity with the self, the true self.
Yep. So I'm just thinking while you're saying that, because with the archetypes and those 4 different phases of womanhood, maiden, mother, guardian or mage, and crone, I would assume that if we don't, and those different archetypes can affect us and influence us at different stages, but if they will get more prevalent or more intense if we don't work with them when we're younger. Like, can you explain if they're like, if the victim and the saboteur, is that always born in the maiden phase, or can that come up at a different phase in your life?
Yeah, I mean, usually all these are imprinted very early on. I mean, Jung would say even before we were born, those imprints are coming through ancestrally. So we're not born clear and straight. We're born already with the stuff from our, people talk about these past lives, and I end up going, no, because, send me for past life healing. No, because everything that's happened in past life is accumulated now in this life. So if you heal now, all that stuff's dealt with anyway, because that's how ancestral healing works. Like the archetypes, we all have multi-archetypes, so multi-personalities. We all have them. We all have these different archetypes working within us. And the whole point of working with those is to make them conscious. It's to bring them from the unconscious world, and to say, so if I never knew that I had a prostitute archetype, I wouldn't know how I was playing out that prostitute in my life. But the minute I make it conscious, I know what it's doing in my life. I know when I'm selling myself out. I know when I'm giving away too much. And so I can start to be aware of that behaviour and change it. The maiden, I've just been working this with my groups. The maiden one's a tricky one, because many women are still deeply connected to their maidens, and that's because society's lost all way of ritual and ceremony. We don't walk through phases anymore. So the end of like a woman's, like the bleed marks the end. It doesn't end a maiden, but it's one of the markers. And so we've stopped doing that, celebrating the bleed as a sacred thing and a great passage into womanhood. And then there's just these, the wedding ceremony itself is a mark of a woman leaving maiden. But we've gone, oh, this is all about church and marriage. It's not. So we need to develop new ceremonies to say, this is me leaving my maiden. And what does that maiden behavior look like? And this is what I do with my groups. These are the maiden behaviors, and these are the shadow maiden behaviors. So which ones are you living in? Which shadow maiden? And you'll find women in their crone still connected to shadow maiden behaviors. Not independent, still self-seeking. All of the things that the maiden holds, if we don't mark them and see them, we start to carry them through. And we've got a load of mothers, like I've got one girl working with, and she won't mind me saying this, but she's deeply entrenched in her maiden and she cannot get out. And she's in her mid-30s, she's got no partner, no children, and she has to see where the maiden is pulling her back. And she has to look at the shadow of the maiden, and she needs a rite of passage into her mother. And she needs to do that internally. Her mother archetype needs to walk her maiden out of maidenhood. And definitely. So there's all, as women, we are ritualistic, we are heavily into ceremony, and that's where we empower ourselves by saying, how do we make tradition? So in my family, for example, my son is just going through puberty. We just mark that with a shaving ceremony. So it's like, how do we mark these transitions? And so we can sit down objectively and go, I need to change this because that's maiden behaviour. I need to become more mother energy, because, the strength lies in the mother and the crone. The maiden's a beautiful, carefree space, isn't it? But imagine living like that for your entire life. It's going to cause you problems.
Yeah, of course. And it's a responsibility that you grow into as you get older as well. And our society totally doesn't support that. It's like you hit a certain age, if you hadn't had a baby, you're on the shelf, like all this sort of dialogue, which is just, so self-deprecating, or deprecating to women as well. And then we take those stories on of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not young enough, all those things. And certainly our mothers and our grandmothers' era didn't have those connections. All those beautiful shamanic wisdoms and teachings and rites of passage, as you say, have just been diluted for so long. I think maybe in the last 7 to maybe 8, 9 years, there's been a reboot of that, and there's been more women's circles and young maiden circles and circles to mark the rite of passage of menstruation and those sorts of things. But when we go to the other end of the spectrum, we go to menopause, like, let's not even start talking about that, because it's like, you may as well just slash your wrists and be done at the age of 50, according to allopathic medicine. It's all downhill from there, and which we know, of course, is the complete bloody opposite. It's just when you get really juicy and really powerful. And that's what I loved about turning 40. It was like really, and it's certainly at turning 50 as well, it embedded. But at 40, I was like, I don't really actually care if you like me or not. Like, I actually really don't care if you like me or not. It was first, like in 30s, you still, you're a people pleaser really to varying degrees, and you want to be a part of that, and that's all part of that phase. But when you hit 40 and then certainly 50, you're just like, if you like me, great. If you don't, I'm not losing any sleep over it, sister or brother. And that's the empowering side. And I can only imagine what it's like. Can you imagine what we're going to be like, Collette, when we get to be crones?
I'm practicing.
Look out, world. It's just like, we're going to be dangerous, darling. So on that note, let's talk about womb trauma, because that's a big topic, and certainly with the things that are happening around the world in relation to that in the shoulder, that all ties in, of course, to the unresolved inherited traumas that we're all carrying, and men too as well, because not just to exclude men, say this is only happening for women. To all the brothers, we love you, and we know that you have your own rhythm with energy through your own phases as well. But tonight, just focusing on that, and you guys obviously came out of a womb as well, and you have that energy. But as far as the womb trauma that you're witnessing on your side of the world as well, can you speak to that and share what's happening there?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and I've had a lot of women message me about heavy menstrual cycles and being caught up in what they believe to be part of the process of the jibby jab and what that entails. So I know I tuned into your podcast that you did with Oracle Girl as well, and just that whole thing about holding your resonance and knowing that I'm not scared of what's out there. I don't feel or be affected by it. I don't think I'm immune to it. I don't think I'm special, but I just don't feel it's going to enter my field at all. And I'm anchoring in my womb daily. I have an affirmation that I do with my womb and to keep her safe. I'm not saying again that it's my womb has no ancestral, because it does. I've lived through them. I've experienced miscarriage and all the things that women come to me for. But I think we have to hold that womb really, really strong. We should have been doing this for years because the womb has been under attack. When you get to be in your mother energy, you realize the importance of the womb and the rite of passage of creation, whether that's a baby or whatever you might birth into the world. And that has been heavily under attack for years with this agenda. Lots of years, and that is why there's such a deep focus on the maiden and wanting to keep women in the maiden, because women in the maiden are not deeply consecrated into their womb energy. We enter womb energy in mother, and so at the minute all that's going on is attack on the mother energy. It really is. I think it's the biggest attack is on the mother energy, and that is what's going to that births the crone gatekeeps and holds and gives the wisdom, but the mother is the actual womb, isn't she? She's the living, breathing womb, and we're seeing such a big attack on that. And it's up to women now to say, okay, this sacred portal is under attack, and that gives me the incentive to make this portal clean, cleansed, healed, protected, and every woman is born with the ability to do that. Every single woman. You don't need initiated by a shaman. It doesn't need activating by the woman who teaches womb. You need the tools and you can do it yourself. Yep. So I think we've really got to keep that. And I have seen women affected. I'm seeing young children affected by it as well. Like, you know, they're coming to me with teenage daughters who are, and that isn't happening to them because they are victims. This is coming up for them to clear something in their lineage. So it has a beautiful dark and light to it. It's both. So it's a call to look into what womb trauma is in your ancestry, and all the answers are in you as to what has gone on in your ancestry.
Yeah, beautifully said, darling. It's just the unlocking of that cellular memory, and then learn, you know, and pausing and stopping and listening and knowing your body as well, which again was things that were taught to the young girls in the tribe and the village by the matriarchs and by the elder women. They were just, you know, taken off and all these things, and certainly with the original peoples here in Australia, and I can speak a little bit because I know a little bit about that, is that they were taken out on country and they would go and do rites of passage and ceremony that was women's business, and the men did men's business with the boys, and they just were initiated into that next level of wisdom keeping, and we don't have that, of course. And we're seeing the scary thing is, of course, one of the many scary things with this shot in the arm is that it's landing, all of the poisonous stuff that's in it is actually landing in the ovaries. It's also landing in the testes and the kidneys as well, but the ovaries especially. And yeah, to totally attack the divine feminine and to destroy the womb and the placenta and everything that is the divine feminine is it's no accident, as we know. It's most definitely, it's been an agenda for a long time.
And I taught something. I'm going to be writing the book soon. It's called The 13 Roses, and it's the 13 gates of a woman's womb. And the ovaries are the cosmic eggs. They contain the past, the future, the present. They're complete portals into the whole of the design program on this planet. And so no wonder they are the main place. And I've read all the research that says that the stuff in it is connecting and collecting within the ovaries themselves.
Oh wow, I can't wait for that. That's when can we expect to get that one out? As soon as possible, please.
It's on my list. It's going to be done by the end of the year. Yeah, the course is written because I run it as a 9-month course. We go through the 13 gates, and so yeah, I think it's about time it comes out as a book so everyone can access all the practices in there, because it really is all about self-practice.
Yeah, definitely. And leading into that, Collette, too, I mean, the power of the yoni. I mean, it's the power of the womb, the divine feminine, the power of the yoni. And I remember seeing, I think it was maybe last year, this photo, which was on social media, and it was taken from behind of this one woman. It was during a protest or riots or something. You may remember this. I think it was in the UK. And there's a whole lot of riot police trying to stop these people having a peaceful protest. And this one woman just sat down, and I think she might have had a top on, she might have taken it off. Anyway, she sat down there and she had nothing on underneath, and she just sat there with her legs spread and just flashed the officers and they just stopped. They didn't know what to do. Like completely like, oh my God, there's this woman sitting there flashing her vagina at us. I mean, that's how powerful we are.
Oh yes, and there's lots of ancient pictures that show some of the biggest like magical women doing the same thing. It's like an ultrasonic weapon, isn't it? And symbolically, if we look at the design of it, and what they will have seen is the Vesica Pisces. It is the opposition of forces meeting and the center of creation. So
Yep.
I'd be surprised at any man that could carry on doing anything.
Maybe that's the answer, Australia, with what's going on here with this lockdown. Maybe we all need to get their nude, link arms, and just sit down in a big circle, across the bridge or something, and just do one big yoni.
Yeah. It's like the lingam, isn't it? It's like the yoni's that big, huge opening, birthing portal, and then the lingam's this big sword of light. They're so powerful, so powerful. And fair play to her, she knew the magic of her yoni, and she got it out.
Yeah, definitely. Now, another thing I wanted to talk to you about was also, and this feeds into, obviously the power of the yoni, or the yoni with your, as you say, and the womb, and our bits basically, is the hysteria that has traditionally been experienced every month with the full moon, for example, like the moon matrix. And you and I have spoken about this privately before, and there's a few of us who are sort of, have cottoned onto this. And we've been working with the moon for quite a few years, and then decided not to, because more information and realizations have come to us, and we've been able to see there's a hijacking system around that, most definitely, that lunacy that literally makes women just completely lose it in that vibration. But of course, it's been marketed very well, and with galactic histories, and obviously histories, civilizations on this plane, this planet now as well, there's a lot of different information that people can access to sort of try and understand what we're going to talk about now. But what's your experience of the moon in the past, and can you share what your sort of tipping point was to sort of like go, no more?
Again, just being brought up in the spiritual movement that was all connected. I thought it was beautiful that we were cyclic with the moon, and it all made sense to me. And I was really, really in balance with the moon. I could flip my cycles. I could do a ceremony and flip my cycle. I could go from white moon to red moon. I could go into white moon for conception, and then red moon when I was teaching. I always bled on the first day of holding any retreat or course, and that was because it felt magical. And I had a really bad miscarriage in New Zealand. I was going out to work with a teacher, and I'd been deeply entrenched with womb work and with the cycles of the moon. And something just wasn't feeling right about it. And I just kept getting little like taps on the door that this isn't right, this isn't right. And a few years went on after that miscarriage, and I'd started reading books on the placenta, because basically I'd give birth to a placenta and I buried it in New Zealand. And I'd read all these books, and then there was just getting little signals in the books about, this doesn't feel right. Anyway, to cut a long story short, over a few years, something really hit me last year, and I was like, I am disconnecting my whole womb, everything from the moon. It's an enchantress. I noticed people's behaviour. I noticed my sessions were different. I noticed lots of things when the moon was full. The same thing, the lunacy. I started to read about the occult of the room, like Aleister Crowley, Hitler. They all used the moon to do the rituals. Hitler would have all the meeting with his Nazi parties on full moons, and they were harvesting occult energy. And then my son's really interested in Second World history, and he started to show me all the dates of things that resonated with the moon. And I was like, uh-oh. So I asked to receive a transmission, which I did with women. I sent out a womb transmission for women to disconnect from the womb. And there's some women, I don't know whether there's anyone on the call that's done it today, but we had such crazy effects. One woman completely skipped her cycle. Another one was bleeding profusely. Mine shortened, went really light. So we were all logging these experiences we were getting from disconnecting, and it spoke for itself. You know, if you disconnect from the moon in any way that you want, you will notice your cycle changes. And I really believe that in the ancients, we didn't bleed 13 times. We bled when we needed to. Our bodies knew. If you read your blood, you can read your blood and see the colour, and you know exactly what your month's been like, what you need to do by seeing how light or dark your blood is, how gritty it is. It can all be read. And I believe that your body does its own process if you empower it to go through its own process. So now I do not log my bleeds. I mean, all these apps that are logging everybody's menstrual cycles.
Another way to hook us up to AI.
Yeah, I don't log, I don't even think about it. I just oh, I'm bleeding, and I just let it all, and it's been completely a different experience. I was never one to suffer from any kind of premenstrual or pains or anything like that, because I've always done womb work. But something changed, and I felt the womb, my own womb, being more empowered. And I believe the moon's a beautiful spectacle for us all to look at and think, gosh, that's amazing. But we do not know enough about it to be connecting to it. I think it's very naive to connect to it, because we do not know enough about its dark side. It's in a vacuum for dark spirits and entities. They come through that portal, and that's been known since the beginning of time.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, darling. And certainly, the trend of witchcraft and sorcery and all those things, even if it's like, like soft witchcraft, to put a label on that as well. It's again, we're realizing that everything that we've all learnt since we were born and what our parents and grandparents have learned in history is basically all BS. So this is just another, we need to be, I think, if we're going to be conscious beings and evolving and expanding ourselves in as many different ways as we possibly can, we need to be open to considering at least that these things may not be exactly what we have been taught. And again, embodiment, you go through your own experience. And I had similar, like you as well. And for all the years that I was doing, aligning with the moon and teaching and having these amazing big circles, and usually bleeding on the full moon, where again, it's like, oh, don't do healings when you're bleeding on the full moon, and all these sorts of rules and protocols. And I'm like, well, I'm actually at my fullest bloody power when I'm doing that, pardon the pun, and would have the most incredible, people would have the most incredible experiences in the circles that I held at that time. So, I was caught up in that vibration. I was fully aligned with that, which is part of all of our process. I can't say to anyone, don't do it. And just because of our experiences, you've got to go through your own journey with it, of course, but research and understand, and then embody as much as you possibly can. But looking back now as well, my cycle was never normal. It was never regular. It was always uncomfortable. I didn't have any major dramas, but it was never a comfortable time. And probably my PMT was like through the roof, and I would be eating boxes of chocolate basically 2 days before, which is now a little bit much. And the minute I made this decision, and it was only really about 6 or 7 years ago, to not even that, to come out. I went out one night in the moon, and it was absolutely divine. And I just had a chat with her, and I said, I love you, but I'm letting you go. And I literally did a ritual to sever the cords and to clear that for myself. And since then, I have had no dramas with my cycle, and my PMT is pretty much non-existent. And I haven't felt that that magnetic draw or pull that's taken me out of myself towards it. And I can now connect to the higher frequencies, because again, way back, our shamanic ancestors would have plugged into the purest vibrations of the moon before it was hijacked by all that occultic stuff that came in later on. So again, I'm not saying, don't align with the moon and completely just diss it, and, don't even bother about doing anything vaguely lunar related. You've got to have your own experience with that. But understanding that there are a lot of different things woven through the matrix, and then especially for those who are having physical reactions and symptoms as well, it's worth looking. And if those things are also inherited, if your mother's also had similar things, and your grandmother as well, it's a cathartic rite of passage, most definitely. And I think while I say that too, Collette, it's like I did the same thing. I kept my placenta. And I had it in the freezer for quite a while because I ended up moving house, and it was kind of funny, you know. Just sort of, my son was like, "What is that thing in the freezer?" But I kept it for a while. I was like, "No, I'm not chucking it out. We're keeping it. I'll know when the right time is to do the ritual with him." And we ended up doing it here where I live now, quite a few years ago, and defrosted her and laid her out in the grass. And the dog was like, "Wow, that looks fantastic." And I was like, "No." And it didn't smell. It was nothing like that. It was absolute, the energy of it was beautiful. And we honored that and smudged and saged, and we did a little ritual for Max, and then we buried it in the garden under one of our favorite trees. And again, as you well know, it's the shamanic ritual to ground the soul of the child on this plane. And I think because so many women don't appreciate that, they don't know this because they're not taught this unless we've got beautiful doulas and midwives that educate them. But the medical world, again, is like, "Oh, just get rid of it. That's just, you know, it's like junk DNA. It's like, just get rid of that. You don't want that." And who knows where those placentas have ended up, you know, probably in a whole heap of vaccines that we don't know about because we understand what goes into those now, which is just horrendous. But that, to me, sort of, and I'd love to hear your perspective, I'm getting to the point, that that would have an influence, of course, for all these children who are on the spectrum, which we all are, feeling disembodied in some way energetically from all these years of mothers chucking their placentas out and not doing the encapsulation, all those things that we're seeing happen now. What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, I was lucky to have been, like, my son's he's not 18, he's 15 now, and I had a lotus birth with him. I kept the placenta attached to him all those years ago, and everyone thought I was crazy. And the placenta, when it comes out and you look at it, it's like the tree of life. And I did my own little ceremony with it, but later on, as I got older, I read a book. It's called The Eighth Chakra, the Placenta.
Yes.
And it's an amazing book about a woman who's dedicated her life to being a placenta shaman, really. That's what she does. And she can tell the diet of a woman and all other things by the placenta. And she's particularly been involved with looking at women in Bali's placentas because they are so deprived. The babies don't grow very big in women's wombs in Bali. And the placenta has been her point of research for that. And it's been due to GMO foods, because the tofu and the tempeh in Bali is all modified, and it's generally their only source of protein because they're so poor. And she talks about the placenta being the guardian of the child that comes through, and this guardian needs honouring, putting back into the earth, or, you know, there's a specific ceremony for the Balinese or for whatever. And for me, it's been about finding your own ancestral ceremonies. And you don't need to go and ask your Auntie John and all of this, because I've been doing this work with women in my groups. It's about going inside yourself and saying, what would my ancestors have done with this, with the knowledge I've got about what I can do with, say, a placenta? What would I do with this? And all of that has got missing, as you say, out of our world, because these deep ceremonies that mark certain rites of passage, as we've said before, are done on purpose so that we do feel disembodied, that we do. People say there's a part of us that longs for our placenta, we're looking for it in some way because it was a part of us that should have been anchored into the ground. And we can still do that. We can call the energy of our placentas back and bring them in and do that as a ritual, ritualistically bring the energy of your placenta back and bury it, mark it in your garden, you know. So yeah, I do think it's an absolute distortion, as is all the quick cuttings of the cords, everything that is sent to empower us, to make us deeply connected to the self, to our ancestors, to everything that isn't, you know, TV fasts that they're trying to sell to us, is disappearing. And that's why we, the women that are all doing this work, have this pull to bring it all back, because it's needed to be brought back on this planet. So I think the more women that can hear this kind of thing and saying, yeah, I don't need to be a shaman or a guru, I can create these ceremonies back in my family unit. And I can teach these things to my daughters and to my sons, so they start doing them even if I didn't.
Yeah. It's making that choice, isn't it? And just going, right, I'm going to embody that and allow that information to come through. As you say, it's always in us. We've just got to be at the right time in our lives, I suppose, and ready to surrender to what will come out of that as well, because it's not always going to be, you know, rainbow unicorn farts and rainbows, of course, when that stuff comes out either. Okay, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be confronting in a lot of ways, and intense, like birthing, like that transition phase, as we said before when we started recording, was that we're pushing and we're breathing and the body's expanding and contracting, and then you reach that transition where, you know, your mind and your psyche goes, can someone get this baby out? And then when you let go, you're really open. And that's the rose. I just got a visual of the rose when I say that, so that's beautiful. And the cervix and the yoni looking like the rose, and then out comes the baby, or out comes that creative project, or, you know, out comes that wound that has been blocking and coagulating inside you. It's really just that choice of being who we are, being not being ashamed of being, you know, not, you know, the programming of being less than because we're women, or that men are better, or even that women are better, or we're not equals. We're complete equals. We're different, but we're completely on the same vibrational frequency. But the power of the placenta is a huge one. And remind me to tell you another little story another time about that, which you'll dig, I'm sure. So what do we do? What do we do now then, you know, with all this? Like, how do we support, like, what are your 3 main tips, I suppose, on, you know, to help women with all the stuff that we've spoken about tonight, to get into that space where they feel, yeah, I can do this now. I can embody and open this side of myself up.
I think when we start to have these conversations, people start panicking, don't they, saying, oh, I didn't do this and there's so much here. But I think my biggest thing is to say to people, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's having a baby or thinking about getting the jibby jab, or it's to think about, this is what I think and this is what I know. What else is there? If we did that for everything, like if I said, oh, I'm aligning my bleed to the moon, but what else is there? If I always have that other than that I know, I can, and that's the shadow. It's when I'm teaching the shadow with people, it's like, yeah, but I'm really argumentative, but what else? What else? What if it's not just that? What else could there be? So if we always open to that, what else could there be? It leaves us open-minded, and it leaves us into a space where we just stop and we question. And we go, what else could there be? And that you can apply that to absolutely any rule, whether that's having a baby, whether that's, you know, what you know about menopause. If I've been taught menopause is horrendous and I've got to take hormone replacement therapy, what else is there?
And
that's always sent me on a good opening path of even challenging my own beliefs. So I think that's another good point I've been trying to teach people recently, is about, like, it's time in all cycles to challenge your beliefs. What needs challenging? And I had this done with my Jungian analyst, who said to me the other month, I want you to challenge your beliefs on God. So everything you think about God, I want you to challenge it. And then I want you to read a book by Jung called, you know, Conversations with Job. And it just blew my mind. And I was like, why haven't I questioned these beliefs before? And it just probably wasn't time. But we need to go through cycles of saying, okay, I've believed this for so long, and now maybe it's time for a new belief system in me. Maybe I need to challenge that too. So always thinking about, what beliefs do I hold that need challenging? And, you know, we've been talking about it a lot, what's going on in the world. I have tried to challenge my beliefs. I've said, like, I don't believe that this is right, and so how could I challenge the opposite side? And I didn't get there, but at least I opened up to it. And then that allows me to understand people who are living in fear, how they're thinking.
Beautifully said, darling. Also, because when you do go, you land in that space, or you lean into it, then you become more aware, more discerning of, like, what is the driver, what energy is the driver behind that? Is it love or is it fear? And it really comes down to either of those, doesn't it? And then you make that choice in the moment, the scary choice of going, well, I'm not going to do what I've always done because it's comfortable and safe. I'm going to go whoosh off to this side, or that's too much for me right now. Consciously or unconsciously, you make that choice, and you continue on the same vein until the universe comes back and goes, knock, knock, knock. Here's another opportunity for you to have this lesson again, and it's going to be a bit more painful this time, but no, we've just got to do what we've got to do in those moments. But yeah, that's beautifully said, darling. Thanks for sharing that.
And I just think change, like this time, no one is immune to taking a big, deep look at themselves now in this collective. And that's what I'm doing. I've done a shed load of work like you, but I'm like, okay, this world's on fire. So what am I not seeing about myself? Where am I still contributing to these darker forces that are operating within our world at the minute? What behaviours of mine? And that might be even starting off simply by saying, what am I consuming? Like, am I being mindful about water, electricity, like the things I buy? So I think that's really important to just say, where do I need to change, and just start there.
Yeah. Touche. Awesome, darling. How can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you to work with you or chat with you and follow you?
Yeah, so on my Facebook page, which we can share under this video, can't we? And my website is templedelarose.com, and all my courses and sessions and everything are on there.
Fantastic. That's great, darling. Thank you so much. We've been chatting for an hour. I could talk to you for days. I think we'll have to do another part of this for sure and continue on.
Yeah.
I'll just have a quick check and see if there's any questions from anyone. We've got a couple of comments, but I might just add that everyone's just saying, yeah, it makes sense. And thank you so much, and beautiful sharing. So thank you, my darling. Sending you lots of love on the other side of the world. And let's do this again soon.
Yes, hold tight over there, everybody. And yeah, love to speak to you again soon.
Awesome, darling. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.